Bashar has talked about the idea of a lot of the drone sightings that were happening off the east coast of the United States. The vast majority of the drones that were spotted at that time were actually military drones. There was some missing medical nuclear material that they were attempting to search for and find, that I believe has been found, that they were using the drone technology to search for. Secondly, there was some indication, according to Bashar, that some foreign nations were attempting to do something not to our advantage. Some of the drones were ET craft disguised as drones that were observing and participating in what was going on. Some of the information that was gathered by the drones was being coordinated by certain extraterrestrial beings to assist in making sure that certain things did not happen in a negative way. People are observing things in the sky that are unusual, and they are reporting it. And I think that's a big step in understanding that people aren't just looking up and saying, oh, I saw something that was the moon or Venus and I'm misinterpreting it. When people see something unusual, they know they're looking at something unusual and they report it as something unusual. And I think that's an important step to take in terms of people observing things like UFOs, so that we can take it more seriously, that when they report something that they feel is not normal, we start with the premise that what they are seeing is not normal. In general, they're mostly realizing that it's just something they can't keep secret for much longer because of certain other things that are going on, because it's the time for the release of this information.
Right now on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks. I'm so delighted to welcome back longtime guest and friend, Darryl Anka. Happy 2025, Darryl. How are you? Thanks for coming back.
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Happy 2025.
Absolutely. Well, happy is one word we could use prospectively, but let's get right into it. We got a lot to cover, you guys, today. You know that Darryl is a frequent guest on the show, and we're never short of things to talk about. But particularly this episode, Darryl, I've been very anxious to get with you. As a matter of fact, I texted you just a couple days ago, concerned, of course, about what's happening in LA, which seems to, knock on wood, has waned a bit. First of all, how are you doing? I know there are a lot of people that want to know. How are you and your family doing?
I'm fine. The escape room business that my wife and I own in Calabasas was shut down for a couple of days as a precaution because the fire got close to it, but they have that pretty much under control now. We live in an area nearby, but not necessarily directly in danger of the fires. So we're fortunate in that sense. But the fires have been quite devastating for a lot of people in LA. And right now, today, the winds have died down at the moment anyway. We do not see any plumes of smoke from where we are. So that's a good sign. They are making some progress. And, our hearts go out to the first responders and the firefighters that are helping to contain this. So far, right now, it seems to be improving.
Good. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, our prayers around the world are going to all of you, whether directly or indirectly affected. I think we've all been affected emotionally, those of us that have been following this. I don't know who hasn't. And you and I spoke very briefly offline, and I obviously I'd be remiss if I didn't get just a little bit of a perspective, high-level metaphysical perspective from what you might say Bashar would share in terms of the significance of what we're seeing, not just with this, but other things we're going to get into today.
I'm sure there are many different ways that experiences like this can be interpreted. Certainly one of them that's very pragmatic is the idea that this in many ways is the result of climate change and what's going on with the changes on the earth, in terms of people facing things and being responsible for their connection to nature, making sure that, we don't do things to the planet that would create more likelihood of these kinds of experiences happening. This area has been very dry for a long time. It's getting hotter and hotter here. The people that say, oh, climate change isn't real should come and live in the San Fernando Valley for a while, because they can really see over a period of many, many years, living in LA since I was a young child. I can certainly see the shifting weather patterns that have happened in this city and around the world.
Mm,
But primarily, again, what I've experienced is that, things are getting warmer, lasting longer in that sense. And a lot of this is simply due to the acceleration that humanity is creating in a natural cycle. But I don't think we would have necessarily been experiencing these kinds of changes for quite some time if humanity hadn't accelerated it with, the effects of our technology. So, when you live in a place where you remember things like summer thunderstorms that don't exist anymore, when
mm,
you remember that a hot summer day may have been in the 90s, and now literally 2 miles from me a couple of years ago we reached 121 degrees, which is bizarre. So, we are seeing slowly things change that are making conditions for fires more conducive in our area. And we're seeing things change in other areas of the planet that exacerbate other weather conditions like the hurricanes and
mhm.
tornadoes and things like that, that other people are struggling through. So, we need to pay attention to our relationship to nature and understand that we're all connected and all part of it, and really look for ways to improve our relationship with it and take better care of what's going on the planet and look at it as a whole system.
Agreed.
We're not disconnected from it, and anything that we do to tip the scales of that system is going to affect everything on the earth, including us. So I
Mhm.
think we just need to be more aware of that.
I agree with you on that. I know that it's a contentious issue, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this in terms of the impetus for the climate change. I think few could argue that there is, we're dealing with extremes, regardless of
Mhm.
where they're coming from. And there are some thoughts as to what may be, at least, forgive the term, fanning the flames, literally. That being said, I agree with you in that. Look, we cannot afford to be oblivious to our connection to nature.
Right.
There's respect that needs to happen. Reverence or lack of reverence for nature. And again, don't want to spend a
Right.
ton of time on it, but I got to just say this one thing. I'm a bird watcher, right? The journeyers know
Mhm.
I love to garden, and I love nature. I love trees. I'm a tree hugger, admittedly. And I live in the most beautiful neighborhood, Darryl, in South Carolina, and I see people walking around on their phones, oblivious to the beauty around them, just taking it for granted. This is just one little example, but I see this everywhere I go. And so, what are the consequences of ignoring Gaia, something that's very
Right.
alive? And that's really where I'm kind of coming from, is a metaphysical perspective of the consequences of not acknowledging and having reverence for nature.
Yeah, and again, just the simple understanding that we are one whole system. Everything
That's
is
right.
interconnected. Even on that level, it's something that a lot of people just don't seem to be able to relate to or look at from that perspective. Is everything is connected to everything else. Nothing is isolated. If you affect one thing, you're affecting everything in some way, shape, or form. So
No question.
even that simple understanding would help.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. The left and right brain of our human systems connected. The left and right hemisphere of the earth is connected. Everything's connected.
Right.
Are the drones and the orbs connected? Let's go there next. We got a lot of stuff to cover, man. This has been an eventful start of the year, and of course toward the end of
Yeah.
last year. I'd love to get your thoughts. I want to actually show the audience in a moment something that you and I looked at offline.
Yeah, Bashar has talked briefly about the idea of a lot of the drone sightings that were happening off the east coast of the United States. One of the things he said is the vast majority of the drones that were spotted at that time were actually military drones, and that they were doing a couple of different things. Number one, there was some missing medical nuclear material that they were attempting to search for and find, that I believe has been found, that they were using the drone technology to search for. Secondly, there was some indication, according to Bashar, that Some foreign nations were attempting to do something not to our advantage, and that a lot of the drones were for the purpose of stopping that from happening. So the majority of the drones, according to him, were military involved in those operations, but some of the drones were ET craft disguised as drones that were observing and participating in what was going on. And some of the information that was gathered by the drones was being coordinated by certain extraterrestrial beings to assist in making sure that certain things did not happen in a negative way. So ETs were involved, not necessarily to the extent that a lot of people may think. And now and then, yes, what we may perceive as a drone might be a UFO in disguise, observing something and just attempting to make sure that we're not really necessarily seeing them for what they are. But that's basically what he has said about that particular drone incident. Now, of course, there are many other incidents that take place in different times in this country and around the world where people see things, drones, orbs, or what appear to be these things that can be many different things. They can be ET probes, they can be energetic connections to other levels of reality, they can be spirit forms, they can be technological devices, they can be many different things. You kind of have to take it on a case by case basis.
Hmm. I've always, well, not always. Yeah, actually always, but particularly recently have felt that there's a number of different things going on. And I think this is a Bashar quote. It's not this or that, but this and that, right?
Depends on
Because
what you're talking about, but yes.
yeah, oftentimes I think.
Yeah,
Let's look at this Darryl. Let's look at this little
sure.
slide that I was able to pull up. This is Sonia Grace, I think a name that you know, and I know a lot of our audience know. She posted this on
Mhm.
Instagram. Shout out to Sonia for, we've been getting these images every now and again.
Right.
She says, "Not the moon. Looking out the window at what appeared to be a drone, and as I zoomed in with my camera, I watched it turn into an orb. This is the
Mhm.
picture I got. Needless to say, I live in the middle of Nowheresville in Arizona, and I was shocked to see one out my window. Have a look at
Yeah,
that."
yeah. Well, again,
Mhm.
people are starting to see different things. And I think we're being prepped to be able to understand that we are not alone, that we are being interacted with, we are being observed by different levels of consciousness, different beings in different realities. So a little, hard to say exactly what the origin of this particular orb is. But when you see something that may look like one thing and then it changes into something else, a lot of times that is reflective of an ET technology where they can project an image of one thing, but then it's possible that you can also see through that depending on your vibration and perceive it as something else. But again, these things are a little bit challenging to suss out on a case by case basis because orbs and orange orbs are seen by a lot of different people. It can be a representation of a different consciousness from a different level observing us. That may be an energy consciousness. It may not even really be a physical thing per se, but that's how it appears in our reality. It can be an ET technology. It can be many different things. And we need to kind of gather a little bit more information and more data to start learning how to tell the difference between these things, if that's even important. In general, certainly we could say if it's something that appears unusual and we can tell it's not something from our technology, then yeah, we're either dealing with something from another dimension, we're dealing with spirit, we're dealing with an ET or an extra dimensional energy in general. We also may be dealing with energies from the earth itself.
Mm.
It may be different ways that Gaia itself has of communicating through energy forms, through orbs. Orbs have been connected to things like crop circles and so on and so forth. So it could be another form of connection and communication coming from different levels of consciousness that have to do even with our own planet. So again, there are many different possible things that orbs can be, and we just need to learn more about them to be able to tell the difference if that's even necessary.
the fact that they're happening. I mean, look, people have been seeing all sorts of objects in the sky, but not the least of which are orb-like
Yeah,
structures. But the fact that so many are sort of um, seeing them together at this
yeah,
time, particularly the orange glowing ones in New Jersey. I was looking up some
right.
information on the number of sightings of both drones and the orbs.
Mhm.
Wouldn't it seem like we're reaching some sort of precipice? I mean,
We
Bashar talks
are.
about open contact. Where are we with all of this?
Yeah, he has said we're going to have open contact within the next 5 years, and this has actually been reinforced by a couple of different psychics as well. Um, well, here's, I think, one of the more important points. People are observing things in the sky that are unusual, and they are reporting it. And I think that's a big step in understanding that people aren't just looking up and saying, oh, I saw something that was the moon or Venus and I'm misinterpreting it. When people see something unusual, they know they're looking at something unusual and they report it as something unusual. And I think that's an important step to take in terms of people observing things like UFOs, so that we can take it more seriously, that when they report something that they feel is not normal, we start with the premise that what they are seeing is not normal. It is not usual. It's not a misinterpretation of the moon or Venus or some other natural phenomena. Now, I'm not saying that such misinterpretations don't happen, but when you get something on such a large scale as the people reporting all the drones, reporting orange orbs and things like that, you have to start realizing that they are accurate only insofar as they are reporting something that is not normal. Something is unusual, something is worth looking at, worth exploring, worth investigating. And I think that is definitely a step in the direction of starting to recognize how ETs and other beings might start introducing themselves when open contact begins, to give us something to look at and say, look, you're observing something here that is out of the ordinary. You all have to get to the point where you agree that this is something unusual and not just pass it off, as a
Mm.
misinterpretation or a natural phenomena. So I think that's one way they're getting us used to realizing that we're going to have more and more opportunities to see these unusual things in our sky. And the more we get used to that, the more we'll be willing to accept that that can take a step further, and that we can start understanding who's behind all those presentations and start being introduced to what's going on behind the scenes. So
Mm.
I do think it's all part and parcel of practicing to look at what's around us a little bit more clearly, that there are
Mm.
unusual things going on that are happening around us all the time, and we're just beginning to acknowledge that is going on more often than we think, because there have been things going on behind the scenes for a long, long time. That's one of the things that I want to underscore when Bashar and other psychics are saying, we're about to have open contact, like within the next 5 years or something like that. Many people say, well, wow, that sounds really soon, that sounds really quick. Why is it happening so quickly? But when you stop and understand that that things have been going on that people haven't known about behind the scenes, that ETs have possibly been working with certain scientists, with certain government officials quietly behind the scenes to prepare us for these kinds of things, then the idea that we might be publicly introduced to ETs within the next 5 years isn't such a stretch, when you understand it's just the end result of what's been going on, possibly for decades behind the scenes, as we've been being prepped to understand we're not alone in the universe.
To summarize, I guess we could say this is a buffer. This is all part of the process. Like you said a
Right.
little while ago, everything is invariably connected, and this
Mhm.
is a perfect case in point. Um, but as we look at this as being perhaps a buffer to get us ready for open contact in
Mhm.
not too long a period of time, I still can't help, Darryl, but look at the consensus among the masses. And the masses, I'm talking, well, there's supposedly 8+ billion people on the planet,
Mhm.
et cetera. Although the news about these sorts of things in whatever form or fashion, including the congressional hearings and the inference of non-human intelligence as a
Mhm.
reality, you
Mhm.
would think that this would be top of mind, water cooler conversation across the board. And I still get this sense that the majority of the people are oblivious, not really paying attention.
Well,
What's up with that?
that's true for some. I think what I've discovered is when people start talking about this, like you and I are talking about this, I get contacted by people who do have their own experiences, but have been afraid to say so publicly. But they know that talking to people like me and you about it is safe. So this is why I call it the biggest secret that everyone knows, because I think a lot more people have had these experiences or understand that this is happening, but we have come out of a climate of fear and ridicule to the point where a lot of people, even though they know something is going on, are still afraid to talk about their experiences publicly for fear of that ridicule, for fear of being shut out. But they talk to me about it. They talk to people like you about it. So I do think more people are aware of what's going on than we think. It's
Okay.
just that right now it's not safe for a lot of people to say, yes, I had a UFO experience. Yes, I had, an abduction experience. Yes, I have this. Yes, I know this is happening. It's not something that is cohesive within our society yet. But again, I think that when the beginning phases of open contact start occurring, people will start to feel safer about saying, I know what this is. I've had my own experiences. I know what's going on. And now that we have some relatively concrete evidence of this, that the majority of the public cannot explain away, cannot deny the existence of, now I feel safer in saying and raising my hand and saying, yep, I've had that too. Yep, I know what's going on. Yeah, I had this experience. I think we're going to see a release, a flood of people kind of coming out of the closet and saying, yes, I understand what's happening because this happened to me too. So I think that that's going to explode at a certain point when they feel it's safe enough to admit that they're not alone in having that experience.
Hey, Journeyers, it's Alexis here, and I've got something really special I want to share with you today. If you've been feeling that quiet nudge, that call for transformation, this might be the moment you've been waiting for. As some of you know, I've been on my own spiritual unfoldment since 2005, and over the years, I've had the honor of coaching individuals through their own transformative experiences, helping them navigate their unique spiritual paths with incredible results. In our one-on-one sessions, we dive deep into your awakening, uncovering practical tools to integrate your transformation into your everyday life. Together, we'll work through any challenges, layer by layer, to reveal your true potential. So, if you're ready to take that first step toward your ultimate transformation, click on the link below to learn more and book a free 15-minute discovery call with me. Let's see if we're a good fit to work together. Remember, your transformation is worth the investment, and I'm here to guide you through it. We're covering a lot of territory today, Darryl Anka, and I knew that we would with all that's going on, but I'd be also remiss if I didn't bring up a brand new documentary that you are featured in called Interview with the Extraterrestrial. And I emphasize the because I have to ask you the question, if you happen to know the answer. I found that to be an interesting title, The versus Interview with an Extraterrestrial. Why do you think the filmmaker chose that as the title?
You probably have to ask the filmmaker, Serena. But I think that it's, well, I'm not going to speculate why she may have chosen the word the. Um, I know that a lot of people find that Bashar's information is very grounding, very pragmatic, very practical. And so I don't know. I'm just guessing she may be giving special significance to his particular information as an extraterrestrial being. But again, probably a good idea to ask her why she chose that particular word as opposed to an
Yeah.
extraterrestrial.
Okay. If I ever have a chance to meet her, I
Yeah.
absolutely will. It's a
And
fabulous
it and
movie.
it and it might be, it might not even be specific to him. It might be the idea of, the human as opposed to the extraterrestrial. It might just be a way of referring to the idea of something that is an essence that is different from humanity. So there may be many different ways you can interpret the use of that word.
Okay, I'm sure you could for sure, but it just caught my attention. By
Yeah,
the
I
way, I
don't,
want to.
you know, I didn't come up with the title, so I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. I want to remind everyone. I'll have a link, of course. Go see it. I watched it last night. You can get it over on Gaia with a free trial, free 7-day trial. Go check it out. Of course, Darryl, you're always so forthright and just so humble about your walk with Bashar, going on over 40 years now, and but it goes even deeper than that. I mean, and I think Serena, the filmmaker, did a really good job in just giving a little background on her approaching you and being able to speak with Bashar in a channeling session toward the end of the film. Paul Hynek is also in this, another friend and
Mhm.
colleague of ours, and it's quite good. So
Oh,
yeah, I
glad you like it.
yeah, absolutely. You've got a lot of stuff going on. You
Yeah.
have something. I'm going to jump around a little bit. You've got another transmission coming up. I believe it's on the 25th of January called No More Secrets. I want to give a shout out for that, but I want you to talk about that a little bit. Now, look, when I hear the word secret, when a lot of us hear the word secrets these days, and the fact that there have been many, not the least of which has been the secret around and about ET intelligence.
Mm.
Um, I'm also thinking of the secrets that have been hidden on terra firma, like the latest with Diddy, as an example.
Mm.
Where are we going with this latest transmission? Are you going to be touching on some of those things, or Bashar?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously the streaming will come out, as you said, at the end of the month. And I think when he's talking about it, he's not only talking about it on a larger scale and things that have to do with UFO stuff and politics and sociology and what have you. He's talking about it on a personal level as well. And what he's talking about are what he's calling consequential secrets. He's not talking about, I'm keeping it a secret that we're planning a birthday party for you. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about keeping the kinds of secrets that would have a negative impact should people find those secrets out, and keeping those secrets, discontinuing the behavior that keeps those secrets going, that are detrimental not only to those that may find them out, but also detrimental to the person holding on to the secret, in terms of the stress that it causes, in terms of the muddiness that it does to our own energy that makes us incompatible with open contact. So I'll let him
Hmm.
explain it in the way that he has explained it, because we've already recorded it. It will come out at the end of the month. But he will be better at explaining all the details of what he means by no more secrets and what's coming up with that in the years, because he's also saying that there is an energy that's happening that would force a lot of those secrets to the surface. So I'll let him explain that in the streaming that comes out. But it's mostly about the idea of holding on to something that is detrimental to our energy, to our physicality, and to clear ourselves of those things if we really want to experience the kind of vibration that would be conducive to having open contact, and also conducive to us just living a clearer, freer life, where we're not burdened by holding on to things that and doing the behaviors of those things that we are keeping from other people that would have detrimental effects were they come to light.
It's interesting that you say that the people, well, let me put it this way: the people that are holding the secrets, or the person, or the
Mm.
people that are holding the secrets, the detriment that would be bestowed upon them if they do not eventually shed. Obviously, you think of the people who may be holding secrets. I'm thinking of factions. I'm going to get a little conspiratorial. I have to. The factions that have held secrets from the public for so long about
Mhm.
so many different things, including our own history, including
Sure.
our own evolution to the extent that they know. Do you think that there is sort of a, forgive the term, come to Jesus moment that they're starting to have, realizing the enormity of the detriment should they continue to hold on to the secret? Do you, not going to give them a lot of credit because I don't think any of it was for
Yeah.
our good. But do you think that there's a little bit of we better start spilling the beans or else we're going to suffer going on?
Well, I think that's what's happening is they're starting to realize that there are just too many cracks in the wall that they had erected initially, and that it's going to get out. So I think what we're seeing is a lot of positioning to make sure that whatever detrimental effects there might be in the secret being learned will be as minimal as possible for them. So I think they're positioning themselves in that way. I do think there are a lot of people who have been part and parcel of keeping those secrets that are realizing that it is detrimental to society at this point to continue that way, and are pushing for releasing of that information, just talking about it on that level. But like I said, as Bashar has said, when you hold on to something that long, when it crosses the threshold of really going from being for everyone's good to being for everyone's detriment for one reason or another, it produces a stress in the body that is not positive at all. And I think some of them may be realizing that, but I think in general, they're mostly realizing that it's just something they can't keep secret for much longer because of certain other things that are going on, because it's the time for the release of this information. And therefore, they can't really fight the momentum any longer. They have to do something to let it out, but they're trying to let it out in a way that still gives them some measure of control, or some measure of safety. So, it's going to come out. It's inevitable. And again, as Bashar has said, it's inevitable within the next 5 years. So we'll see what happens as people position themselves in various ways to be able to handle whatever the information is. And I'm sure that there will be some factions for whom it will be chaotic. But nevertheless, like Bashar said, if we're really going to engage with ETs that are, for the most part, telepathic, it's not going to be of benefit to us to hold on or continue to behavior to hold on to the secrets on a personal or public level that are detrimental to ourselves. So we really need to become far more transparent. Otherwise, we're going to have a tough time being able to stand in the presence of beings that are of a much higher vibration. It will simply not work properly.
There are contactees that have talked about the stress that their physical bodies take in the presence of some of these beings. And I'm not just talking about the sighting of a UFO, but literally being taken on board craft as an example, and people feeling sick, not because it's a bad situation, but just because of the difference in
In the
the
frequency.
in the frequency. Yeah, exactly. The rate of vibration. And
Yeah,
somebody used the term temporal aphasia, which I found fascinating. That they,
a good term.
yeah, and sort of a sickness that they would take on in
Yeah.
the presence of some of these beings.
Yeah,
So,
because for a couple of reasons. Number one, being exposed to that higher frequency forces issues to the surface in our consciousness that we haven't yet integrated, and it forces us to face them. And if there is fear associated with that, that can feel, very, very detrimental. Again, it's not something that's being done maliciously. It's just what happens when you're exposed to a higher frequency. It sort of tends to obliterate the compartmentalization that we've placed upon ourselves to keep secrets from ourselves. Or when we say, I'm not ready to face this within myself, I'm afraid of facing this within myself, it forces those barriers and those compartments to dissolve. And that can cause what Bashar has called psychotic shock or psychic shock. The second thing that happens in exposure to that higher frequency is that higher frequency of many ETs is very similar to the frequency of spirit itself, to our natural soul selves. And when the physical body is exposed to that, it interprets exposure to that frequency of spirit as if we're about to die. And so we go into panic mode, we go into survival mode, flight or fight. And so it's a panic, a physical bodily panic reaction to exposure to an energy that we interpret as I'm about to die, because it's very similar to the energy of spirit, the frequency of spirit. So when we get over our fear of death, when we understand more about the continuation of our consciousness and lose the idea of the fear of death, we also won't have that kind of reaction being exposed to those higher frequency energies that are very close to the energy of spirit.
Wow. Talk about everything being connected. What it more than an analogy, but just a very similar similar response. Fear of
Yeah,
death, which is at the top of the
exactly.
list of fears, obviously.
For a lot of people, it is. Yeah.
Hmm.
But see, that's the thing to me is we really have to start understanding that. I mean, Bashar sort of said this recently, in the sense of being a little humorous, but in the sense of also being literal. He said, there's no reason for you to fear death because you're all already dead. And
Right.
what he meant by that is spirit is our natural state, and we've actually never left it. We're there right now. It's just that we are pretending that we're not. That's what physical reality is. It's a soul's ability to focus itself to have a certain kind of an experience in such a way that it appears as if we have left spiritual reality. But that's our natural state. We can't leave it. We can create a scenario within our consciousness that makes it appear as if we've left it. But that's why many people start to understand that physical reality is an illusion. Now, I don't mean illusion in the negative sense. It's just that it's a projection, it's a simulation that
Right.
gives us the opportunity to explore things from a certain perspective the otherwise couldn't explore. But it's not that, the question, is there life after death, is kind of backwards, because it's
Mhm.
really that the physical reality is the secondary reality. That spiritual non-physical reality is the primary one. So, saying, is there life after death, implies that somehow this physical reality is somehow primary and that afterwards is secondary. But that's a complete reversal of the way Bashar says things actually are. We are spirit first and foremost, and we are in
Absolutely.
spirit right now.
Right. I've got so many scenarios dancing around in my head how we might rephrase that, or I don't know that we even need to. Forget
No,
that. What
no,
what I wanted to just remark though is, you've heard countless examples of people that have had NDEs or even out of body experiences where they talk about
right,
that level of consciousness is more real
right,
than
exactly.
the physical, conscious
Yeah,
waking state. And that, of course, lends credence to what you're saying. I
yeah.
think that makes sense.
Yeah, that's our natural state. And we just simply wake up back into it when we die. We let go of the focus that's happening within the soul that concentrates our attention into what we call the experience of physical reality. But it's just a concentration that's happening within the soul. It's the soul doesn't go anywhere. Physical reality is happening within it. That's why Bashar says it's more accurate to say that instead of saying that the body has a soul, it's more accurate to say the soul
Soul has a
body.
body. There have been people that have witnessed individuals, quote unquote, crossing over that have said they have seen something emerge from the body at death and they believed it to be the soul.
Right, but that's our interpretation of what's happening. From the soul's point of view, it's simply that their focus to physical reality is softening. We interpret that, and that softening going back to the size, shall we say, of the soul from this dense focus. It's softening and relaxing and going back to the diameter, the size of the energy sphere that is the soul. And we interpret that from our physical reality as if the soul is leaving the body. But it's actually a softening of the focus of the soul so that it is now beyond the scope of physical reality. It's broadening out. But from our linear perspective, we see that as the soul leaving the body. We're actually
Mhm.
seeing an expansion of the soul's awareness going back to its natural state.
For those
We
that are looking on, that's what they're actually seeing.
That's what they're actually seeing. But because we are linearly focused here and we think in terms of individual beings, we
Mhm.
interpret that expansion as if it's a literal body leaving the body. It's like a soul body leaving, a spirit body leaving the physical body. But that's just like we're seeing a slice of the reality,
Right. I get
not the
that.
whole holographic, three-dimensional or multidimensional version of it.
It's almost like we're witnessing a quantum effect going back into the vacuum, going from
Right.
particle to wave, but they're never two distinct things. They're just two different states, but still
Right.
fundamentally the same thing.
Right. But again, we personify our experiences here in physical reality. So it's natural for us to say that when we see the soul expanding back to its natural state, that we interpret it as something is leaving the body because we consider the body to be the primary focus, and it's
Mhm.
not.
Mhm.
But that's the way it's an interpretation, it's a symbolic representation from a space-time linear point of view of what's happening in terms of the soul expanding back, its focus expanding back to its natural state.
Mhm. I think everything that we experience through the 5 senses can only be, an interpretation
Right.
within the corporeal state that we're in.
Right, because the physical mind only has so many symbols to work with.
Right. Well said. I mean, we personify God, Darryl.
Mm,
I was just listening
yeah,
to a debate with a biblical scholar and somebody else that I know well. I'm gonna leave names out of it, but it seemed to be somewhat of a futile conversation, particularly from the one
right.
that was a scholar, because it's like, what does that really matter? I mean, I don't know. It just seemed to be you're missing, as they say in the UK, you've lost the plot.
Yeah.
You've lost the plot. Well, let me ask you this. Speaking of religion, I don't know if I've ever asked you this before.
Mm.
What do you think the purpose, fundamentally, if there is one, Orthodox religion has served in our history from a high level perspective?
Well, I think from one earlier historical point of view, it certainly helped to bring people of like mind together to organize things in a way that make people feel like they belong to a community.
Mm,
So that can be a positive aspect of the initial reasons for forming religions, community, safety, like-mindedness, things like that. But of course, like anything in physical reality, it can be misused for purposes of control, for purposes of empowerment and things like that. But as long as people use it to understand from a more ethical or moralistic point of view how to be good people, how to be kind people, positive people, constructive people, not to be negative, um, to understand that, it's important to be in alignment with positive energy. All the things that we're now sort of understanding can be done from a more spiritual point of view as opposed to a dogmatic religious point of view, where we don't necessarily need the organization anymore in order to have a personal spiritual relationship with all that is, with source, God, what goddess, whatever you want to call it. So I think it was for the level that humanity was at the time, historically speaking, in the past. It was something that provided a function to bring people together, to create community, to create single focus, to create an idea of the difference between positive and negative. It got out of hand because a lot of people get lost in a lot of negative and fear-based beliefs. Now we're kind of starting to come out of it, where we don't necessarily need the trappings of the organization so much anymore. We don't need, let's just say, the middlemen anymore so much.
hmm,
If there are
mm,
people who still find that their faith and their religion is helpful to them, that's fine. It's just a
mm.
permission slip, like any other permission slip, to allow you to have some sense of guidance in your life. That's fine. You can use it that way. But I think more people are realizing that we already have a natural spiritual connection to source, and
Yeah.
that you don't so much need the trappings of religion anymore in order to have that connection, to feel that connection, and to understand how to be a positive and constructive and helpful person in service to humanity without necessarily needing someone to tell you how to do that anymore. So for some people it still works, for others they're kind of evolving beyond that.
I've heard Bashar say two things a lot throughout the years. One is, audience, I bet you can guess, follow your passion. But number two is let go of things that don't serve you anymore, Darryl. Would this be one of those things?
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Anything that's that you feel is outdated, obsolete, anything that's holding you back from being your full self, anything that is trying to say that they have the control and you don't, that they have the understanding and you can't, is
Mm,
going in a direction that isn't really beneficial for the evolution of humanity. So it's an outdated, old-fashioned kind of way of doing things. And again, if it still works for some
mm,
people, that's fine. But different people are at different levels. Different people have different levels of understanding. And I think that when people reach a level of understanding that they are aspects of all that is, and that they're not limited by their definition of what that means, of what source really is, then they tend to go more in what we call a spiritual direction,
mhm.
or even a humanitarian direction.
Which is
You know,
spiritual to me.
yeah, which is spiritual.
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't really matter as long as the basic understanding is: look, we're here, we're interconnected with each other, we can help each other, we can explore things that expand us creatively, positively. It doesn't really matter where you're coming from. It doesn't matter whether you have any religion or spirituality at all, as long as you understand that that's the direction that helps humanity evolve in
Mhm.
positive and constructive ways. And that's really what it's all about.
Absolutely. I agree. A couple more things I wanna touch on in our remaining time. I wanna go back to, the film with,
Mhm,
filmmaker Serena DC. This
mhm,
idea of multiple Earths came up in your dialogue with her, and you've discussed
right.
this idea before,
Mhm,
that there are many versions of Earth currently existing. We could call them parallel realities
right.
that are coexisting, and you have said, or Bashar has said, I think you both agree, that we only see what we're attuned to. It
Mhm.
seems like that's happening more and more now, Darryl, where
Oh, yeah.
people are definitely we hear the term bifurcation. Dolores Cannon was a big proponent of the splitting of Earths, and
Right.
she said literally. Where do you think we are now in terms of becoming more of a real scenario where this isn't just a metaphor?
Right.
This is actually
Well, I
real.
think we're experiencing, as we explore consciousness, as we raise our vibrational frequencies, we expand our bandwidth of perception. And people are starting to perceive more than one reality. This is where you get things like what people call the Mandela Effect, where we remember different histories simultaneously. No, this happened. No, 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 it happened this way. I think we're seeing symptoms like deja vu more and more, which again can be for other reasons, but can also be the recognition that there are parallel realities that may be slightly different than ours that we're starting to perceive. Maybe something similar is happening in that reality and we pick up on it energetically, and then when it finally manifests in our timeline, we go, wait a minute, I've had this experience before.
Mhm,
Or we're picking up on the life path that we laid out for ourselves in spirit. And when we finally arrive at that point, because we're more sensitive to picking up on the energetic life path, the blueprint of our life path, we go, wait a minute, it feels like this has happened before. So it's the broadening of our bandwidth. Our senses are extending to incorporate more than one reality possibility or probability. And I think that's going to increase. So it's those to me are symptoms of starting to consciously realize that we actually have the ability to choose and to navigate in the direction of different realities that are more vibrationally compatible with what we prefer. It is the formula that Bashar shares with us that is the navigational tool that allows us to navigate in the direction of realities that are more vibrationally compatible with what we prefer. That's what the formula is for. It's literally a rudder that steers us in the direction of different versions of Earth that are more reflective of what we
mhm.
say we prefer to experience. But our bandwidth is broadening so that we can pick up on what all these different probabilities may be and how we can have different futures and different realities and different probabilities and different parallel experiences, and to decide what we really prefer.
That would also include, I think you've made mention of the people that we even notice, meaning that could
Mhm.
there be a group of people where people that are I'm trying to come up with a word picture. People that are on another frequency, so to speak,
Right.
wouldn't even be acknowledged by those other people. In other words,
Eventually,
will there
yeah,
be an invisibility factor? I think that's
yeah,
existing right now.
yeah. Some of
Okay.
it does exist right now. You lose people, lose touch with them, and you don't necessarily know whether they're still around or not. But I think in the future, we are going to see that when someone is truly vibrationally incompatible with the vibrational frequency that you're existing on, you simply won't be able to perceive them anymore in your
Mm,
reality at all. And I
yeah.
think that that's going on right now in a lot of ways and always has been. People that perceive things that the mass consensus doesn't agree is real doesn't mean they're not seeing something that's not real. It just means they're not agreeing with the mass consensus. So that
Mhm.
has been going on as long as there's been humanity. But now I think we're becoming more consciously aware that this is something we can control with regard to what we prefer, what we choose. The consequences of our choices create frequencies that allow us to perceive the realities that are germane for those frequencies and nothing else. You
Nothing
only
else.
perceive what you are the vibration of. So that's why Bashar often uses the television analogy. It's like you only get the program that you're tuned to. If you want to
Mhm.
change channels, then you get a different program. But right
Mhm.
now, our channel changer is broadening so that we can actually perceive that there are more programs happening all at the same time. And it can be a little confusing at first, but it's to give us an opportunity to decide
Mm.
which program do we really prefer and to steer ourselves vibrationally in the direction of what we really prefer by being given an opportunity to see all the different choices and learn the difference between what we do and don't prefer more clearly.
Mm. Wow. It can be overwhelming to a lot of people because
Can be.
and even the people that are seeking this sort of
Mhm.
expansion of consciousness, broadly speaking, I've talked to people that are going through this transition and they're kind of like, "Be careful what you wish for." It can be overwhelming.
Well, yeah, and the other side of this, and I encounter this from time to time, and sort of, I sort of put it this way. Sometimes when people start getting into spirituality, they start getting into understanding metaphysical concepts, they can get a little ahead of themselves in terms of what they're interpreting. And sometimes the way Bashar puts it is people can have just enough understanding of spirituality to be dangerous. So they
Mm,
make assumptions they don't understand. They're still filtering through their old-fashioned belief systems because now they found this bright, shiny new reality, but they're still interpreting it through their outdated belief systems, and they don't know
yeah.
how to tell the difference yet. So yes, it can be overwhelming and it can be confusing, but it's important for people to sort of stay focused within themselves to clear out and to really focus on clearing out their old-fashioned and fear-based belief systems before they start putting out in the world their interpretations of what they think is going on metaphysically. Because a lot of times
Mm,
when they have still holding on to outdated definitions, a lot of what they're putting out will be misinterpretations of that idea.
mhm.
So it's more important to work on yourself first and really clear your belief system out so that the information that you are finding out about and that you're learning about can be understood more cleanly and more clearly. It's a very
Agree.
important process to go through.
Oh, so important, without bias. That's a
Yeah.
difficult thing for us humans to resist,
That's
to
just been our training. Yeah. So we have to
yeah,
retrain ourselves to understand that it's not about, oh, I found this shiny new pebble. I'm going to share it with everyone before you even know what it is that you've got in your hand.
I love
You
that
know,
analogy. Yeah.
yeah.
I this is an important question because it's come up in the last well, it comes up on occasion in an interview
Mm,
I was listening to, it came up again, and I thought I'd bring it up to you.
sure.
This is a very emphatic statement, Daryl, but it's been said. The human race is mentally ill, period. That's an emphatic statement, and
Yeah.
I'm not making it necessarily, although I tend to want to give that some thought, that the human race is fundamentally mentally ill. I'm not gonna mention names as to who that's come up with, but people that
No, I
you and I
understand.
both know.
I
I wanna
understand.
get your thought I wanna get your thoughts as well as Bashar's to the extent that you can. Do you
Well,
resonate with that
I
emphatic
understand the
statement?
concept. I would say that it's simply the result of a lot of people being energetically out of balance. So, you can call it mental illness, you can call it functional insanity, whatever you want to call it. It's an out of balance state. It's like saying that your brain is chemically imbalanced. It doesn't function properly. It's not functioning holistically. It's compartmentalized in such a way that there are conflicts between the different compartments and different sections. It's neurologically inefficient. There are many ways that this can be described. Mental illness can be used as a term, but it doesn't really help in solving the issue, where I think the idea that things are imbalanced, at least you can have the idea that it can be brought back into balance somehow. But when you hold on to ideas, beliefs that are energetically and vibrationally out of balance with the core essential frequency of who you really are, then yes, symptoms and experiences like mental imbalance, like mental illness, do occur. I just don't necessarily prefer to use that term, because saying that something is mentally ill almost makes it seem as if it cannot be changed.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas saying something is out of balance, it implies something can possibly be brought back into balance if you understand the reason for why it was out of balance to begin with. It gives you something to work with. So I don't disagree with the description of the effect that appears to be happening, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think describing it as mental illness is conducive to solving the problem.
Oh, I agree with you. Well, I mean, I think the term or the phrase, the
Hmm.
statement, is meant for shock value, because it's basically
Sure.
just, not painting with a broad brush, but just saying, Here's the deal." I mean, think of the history of the trauma,
Yeah.
generations and generations of trauma that this human family
Sure.
has gone through, the abuse, the
Mhm.
trafficking, the this, the
Yeah.
that, the control
Yeah. If the term is meant to wake people up to the fact that they're not necessarily operating on all cylinders, then
on all
that's
cylinders.
fine.
Yeah,
You
well, I
know,
think it is.
but again, I think you have to go farther and or further and say, okay, if you admit that we're mentally ill, if you admit that humanity has this problem, then at least the shock value has served a purpose by getting you to admit that there is something that's out of balance, and that you need to seek to figure out how to bring it back into balance, how to stop being mentally ill. What are the natural functions that will allow you to recover? So it's fine if you use the term for shock value to wake people up, but you also have to provide some method by which they can reclaim themselves as well.
Absolutely. I think the context in which they were mentioned in both cases didn't really lend itself to providing a solution, but just kind of the state of affairs, really just kind of a commentary on all that's wrong with the world. Yeah, that's the other thing. I hope in
Right.
2025, Daryl, we can focus more on acknowledging the problem, sure, but then providing the solutions like you did so beautifully.
Well, and exactly, that's what Bashar is all about, and that's what the formula is for. It is literally a condensation, an instruction manual for how to bring yourself back into balance, how you create the reality that is more reflective of what you truly are as an aspect of source and creation.
Mm,
So Bashar is providing that tool. I'm not saying he's the only one. I'm not saying he has the only path, but it is a very efficient, very powerful tool for letting go of mental illness, for really understanding how our minds work, how our belief systems create our experience of reality, and how to bring them back into balance. So we do have access through Bashar and many other sources for the tools that are necessary to allow us to start functioning as rational people again, instead of being out of balance.
right.
So, I would suggest that people, again, investigate themselves, let go of the fear based and negative belief systems, find ways to bring yourself back into a calm, centered state of balance so that you can move forward in life in a more constructive and
Mm.
positive and serving way.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. My only concern, and I don't want to keep presenting the problem, is there's so many people that don't realize that they're, quote, mentally ill or out of balance
I
to be able
understand.
to seek
Of
solutions.
course,
It's
because people that are in denial that they're in denial. So it's a double wall. But the thing you have to remember too is, we're on a journey here. Everyone has a different life path.
Yeah.
Essentially, we are all indestructible, eternal, and infinite spirits. No one has to get it in this lifetime. There will be many, many other opportunities for people to understand and assess what
Mm.
the experience has meant to them, what lessons need to be learned from it, and to always have another chance to experience something that will help them figure out what choices that they could make that would be more constructive and positive for them as well as everyone else. So no one has to figure it out in one lifetime.
Thank goodness for that, right? Because this is
Again,
but a blink of an eye.
it's the unconditional nature of existence. You always have another choice. You always
Always,
have another chance.
you always have another
Always.
chance. I
Always.
like that as a title. You always have another chance.
Hmm.
Let's end on this. 2025 started off with a bang. We started off talking about some of the things that 2025 started off with. What
Hmm.
is 2025? At the start of every new year, the big question is this going to be the year? Well, the year for what? Is 2025, given it that it's a 9-year in numerology,
Hmm.
from your perspective, from Bashar's perspective, is it bigger than what we've seen? Or again, is
Yes.
it just another little tiptoe in that direction?
No, I think it's going to accelerate. And again, I think that is the reason why the first transmission of 2025 is no more secrets, because this is another step in what Bashar has presented as the Interstellar Alliance social experiment. Is you have to stop the behavior that is creating these consequential secrets. So I think that's something that he is saying, look, if you don't let go of this behavior, the energies, the momentum, the inertia of
Mm,
the collective consensus reality that's behind our evolution is going to force those secrets to the surface. So it would be to your advantage to stop holding on to those, to stop doing the behavior that creates them, both on a public and personal level.
mhm,
So I think what we're seeing is that 2025 is the year where those secrets begin to break down, those walls begin to break down, more secrets start coming out, more things are exposed for us to understand what's going on behind the scenes. And so to me, it is the year of no more secrets.
there you have it. I don't think there's anything left to say. Let's see what unfolds.
We will. I'm sure we will.
Not only may we live in interesting times, oh, hell yeah, we're living in interesting times. And you
Yeah,
gotta remember to leave room for laughter, leave room to
absolutely.
smile.
Absolutely. Every plan has to have, as part of the plan, the possibility that the plan needs to be changed.
Absolutely. Love it.
Yeah.
You always bring, and I mean you, Darryl, such a refreshing perspective. You're a joy
Oh, thank you.
to know and to chat with and to bring
And
light to
so are you.
so many. Well,
So
thank
are
you. I
you. And
appreciate
thank you
you.
for doing this. Thank you for having, I always thank people who provide these kind of outlets so that we can have these discussions, we can share
Mhm.
information, and, people can decide to absorb it or not, but at least the outlets exist, the conversation exists, and
Indeed.
that's really what's important. So
Absolutely.
thank you for doing what you do.
I appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to our next dinner.
Well, get yourself out to LA.
I know, or get yourself to South Carolina. Let's see what happens first. We'll
I
make it
believe
happen.
there's an opportunity. I will be coming. Well, let's see. I know we're coming to the East Coast in New Jersey in June.
Oh,
Bashar will be doing a session there, but I also believe someone is attempting to arrange an event. We just did an event in Sedona with this
uh-huh.
person and the channel panel, and I believe they're trying to get a channel panel in Asheville
Oh, dear. That would be fantastic. That's in North Carolina. Yeah.
for the fall. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But there
Okay.
is a possibility that Bashar will wind up a couple of times on the East Coast
I
in
love it.
events this coming year. So June and in the fall, maybe October, November.
And I know that you will stay in touch with me, Darryl, offline, so I can get the word to my community, and we'll keep everybody up to date for sure. Listen, everyone, you got to see a couple of things. We've got No More Secrets coming up in just a few short days. By the time this airs, about a week or so.
Right.
Darryl, can you make sure to get me a link, or can I get a link from somewhere? Make sure to have it in the description. People can still sign up,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. All right. We want to
Just
have
go to
that.
Bashar.org. Just go to Bashar.org for
Okay.
anything that has to do with what's coming up with Bashar events or Bashar information or channelings.
I love it.
Bashar.org.
Okay. And also, interview with the extraterrestrial. Go see it. It's good. It's really good. And Darryl, of course, you're always bringing it. You were bringing it. So
Thanks,
we'll make
Alexis.
sure people see that as well. Don't hang up, Darryl. I want to say a proper goodbye, but I am going to sign off with the Journeyers for now. Thank you as always for watching us here on Higher Journeys. And we'll leave it here with all of the trials and error that are going on. There's equal blessings and beauty coexisting in on this beautiful planet and around it. So go grab a little bit of that, will you? It's worth it.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Darryl, thanks again.
Thank you.
Always appreciate you. And we'll talk
Take
to you
care.
soon, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.